Our prayer this morning is by Barbara Peskin. In this familiar place, listen to the sounds of breathing, creaking pews, shuffling feet, clearing throats, and sighing all around. Know that each breath, movement, the glance meant for you or intercepted holds a life within it. These are signs that we choose to be in this company, have things to say to each other, things not yet said, but in each other's presence, still trembling behind our heart's doors. These doors closed, but unlocked, each silent thing waiting on the threshold between unknowing and knowing, between being hidden and being known. Find the silence among these people and listen to it all. Breathing, sighs, movement, holding back. Hear the tears that have not yet reached their eyes. Perhaps they are your own. Hear also the laughter building deep where joy abides, despite everything. Listen, rejoice, and say amen. Our reading this morning is by David Blanchard. He says, "My friend tells this story. He had been sharing an apartment with a roommate for several years. The roommate had many exquisite belongings, Oriental rugs, Chinese imported porcelain, Sheraton furniture, and Steuben glass. Most of the objects had been acquired when the roommate had shared his life with a lover who had since left him. Somehow that made these things precious to the roommate, and my friend knew it. In a way, the apartment had become a memorial to this failed relationship. One night, my friend stopped at a florist on the way home from work and bought some large lilies. When he got home, he looked around for something to put them in, and he spied the perfect vase, a tall, elegant vase that had been one of the last gifts from the former lover. My friend arranged the flowers, put them on the mantel, and went about making dinner. All was well, at least until the warmth of the house started to open more and more of the blossoms, shifting their weight. My friend was in the kitchen when he heard the vase hit the stone hearth. This was a disaster. My friend knew his roommate would be devastated. The vase was irreplaceable. He swept up the shards of glass, trying to decide whether to play dumb, vase? What vase? Or plead for mercy. He chose the latter. The roommate got home, the story was told. There were no fireworks, no tears, no anguish, just a quiet, calm acceptance of what had happened, a kind of forgiveness, a kind of letting go. The next day, the roommate called an antiques dealer and sold most of the furniture he had preserved from the broken past. He rolled up the carpets and took them to an auction. He gave the rest of the Steuben glass to friends who had admired it. And he thanked my friend for choosing that particular vase to hold the lilies. It wouldn't have worked out the same way if the roommate had smashed the vase in anger. The ending would have been different if my friend had avoided revealing a painful truth. but several things serendipitously came together. The choice of flowers, the selection of the vase, the placement on the mantel, the warmth of the furnace, the readiness of the roommate to reconsider the life choices he had made. The disaster was really a blessing. From an unwanted event came an invitation to freedom. It doesn't always work that way, but this story is a reminder that it's possible. It's possible for disappointment to open doors we had been afraid to enter. It's possible that the past won't let us live in the present. It's possible that everything makes its own sense, even when that sense is not immediately clear to us. When life's next catastrophe sends you reeling, sit down and take a few deep breaths and see what happens if you peel away the layers of meaning to see what is pulsing at the core. Maybe you too will find reason to give thanks on an unlikely occasion. Return again. Return again. Return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are born and reborn again. Sometimes we just need that moment of return, that moment of centering, that moment of remembering what is important when so much seems important but isn't. We get caught up in so much that would be better if let go. Anger, disappointment, embarrassment, even grief. That one's hard to talk about because it might sound like I am rushing people through a grieving process which can't be rushed through. Like I am asking you to forget loved ones or give up struggles against injustice. But that's not it. I'm talking about the release that comes when you cease to hold something so tightly that it suffocates you. I'm talking about rolling up the carpets bought by your ex-lover, which you have been protecting from your own shoes for too many years. I'm talking about moving on, because staying where you are is painful. Grief can change shape, says Barbara Hurd. Lighten a little. Hurt can too. She knows this. A couple of years ago, she writes, I sat in a chair at the edge of the Thar Desert in India. I'd been traveling with a partner who had just disclosed something that made me want to walk away, far away, out into the desert, to just keep walking across that flat, dry expanse. It was twilight. I got up out of my chair, headed away from the small village, the dancers, the decorated camels, walked in the soft sand, the small grains working their way into my shoes. The desert drew me as surely as if it were a magnet, and my body a collapsing stack of iron shavings. I kicked at anything, spat out a searing attack to the empty dunes. I wanted to pound something, his head perhaps. Barbara clomped one foot and then the other into the sand. which shifted just slightly, but nothing else happened. The wind didn't gust. She didn't feel fortified by the satisfaction of being the one so clearly wronged. And no one from the village came to bring her back. Nothing happened. When she turned around, she couldn't even see her tracks. Everything seemed swallowed up in the vastness, the endlessness of sand, that ancient Indian sky. And finally, the need to lash out in revenge lessened. She didn't have to yell or sulk or grab the first flight home. It wasn't that the hurt lifted, but that there was, out there in the desert, more room for hurt. And so it didn't press so hard. That familiar sense of needing to explode with emotion eased. Barbara knows about the release that comes when you cease to hold something so tightly that it suffocates you. Chosen Jack Hobner writes about the softening he experienced when visiting his parents as an adult. In his essay, A Zen Zealot Comes Home, he describes the moment when his feelings toward them finally shifted after years of anger and resentment. He says, "Finally, my mind caught up with my mouth. My apoplexy ceased. My fury lost its redness. And for the first time that trip, I really took my parents in. Dad's once chiseled face collapsing with age. Mom's hair pinned up in a bun, one step closer to desolate white. How old they'd become. How many more visits would I even be blessed with? How many more chances to make things right? These were not the same people who had raised me. Those people existed only in my head, caged and rotting behind my tight, unhappy grin for decades, while my actual parents got older, gentler, wiser, while their bodies fell apart and their souls grew deep. It's hard to let go of old ways of thinking. They were so true for us once. But grief and hurt can change shape, and we can lighten our grip on them. My colleague, Reverend Jean Malden, tells the story of her graduation from seminary. Her mother flew in from out of state to cheer her on. They had both worked so hard, sacrificed so much to get to that moment. As the time of the ceremony neared, her mother proudly unpacked Jane's doctoral robe from the box and volunteered to iron out the wrinkles. As her mother worked on the project in the next room, Jane heard a scream of terror, and her mother ran back into the room sobbing, clutching the robe. "I'm so sorry, Jane. I've ruined it. I've ruined it." Sure enough, the first doctoral robe ever to be worn by a member of her family had a large hole, clearly the shape of a travel iron, in the underside of one sleeve. There was nothing to be done. The ceremony was in just a few minutes. They grabbed their things and dashed to the church. Jane took her place in the procession. Colleagues whispered to her in concern. She showed them the branded sleeve. Oh, that's too bad," said a classmate. "It will cost a lot to get that sleeve replaced," said another. Then her friend Patricia chimed in, "Well, I think it's dear. Every time you wear your robe, you'll have the memory of your mother with you." And so it was. Jane let go of her attachment to having a perfect robe. And now, every time she wears hers, she feels connected to her mother. With it, she carries all of the strength and the pain that she has felt in her family. It reminds me that most of us are walking wounded, she says. And although the wounds don't always show, they help make us who we are and help prepare us for the joys and trials of life. The playwright Florida Scott Maxwell once wrote, "You need only claim the events of your life to make yourself yours. When you truly possess all you have been and done, which may take some time, you are fierce with reality. You need only claim the events of your life to make yourself yours. When you truly possess all you have been and done, you are fierce with reality." I just know that she didn't mean to possess all we have been and done by inhabiting our mistakes and regrets and embarrassments forever. I just know that what she meant is that we accept them and then move on to living, on to growing, on to experiencing fierce with reality. But oh, how hard it is to move on, to let go. How much discipline and wisdom it takes. How quickly we forget. I sometimes find that the easiest way to remind myself of some of life's harder lessons is to find a song that reminds me. The two hymns I chose for today are good for that. Sometimes I sing them to myself when I need to be recalled to center, called to move on from whatever tizzy I have worked myself into, whatever stuckness I am stuck in. Not all of my Getting Unstuck songs are from our hymnals, though. The best song I know for moving me out of a rut, a funk, a sadness, a grudge, is by Taylor Swift. The player's gonna play, 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 and the hater's gonna hate, 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 hate. Baby, I'm just gonna shake, 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 shake. I shake it off. I shake it off. I dance to this song every week at Zumba. Dancing helps too. We all just let loose as Taylor's voice blasts from the stereo system, but I keep cruising, can't stop, won't stop moving. It's like I got this music in my mind saying, it's gonna be all right. There is so much outside of our control in this world. Taylor knows this. Heartbreakers, gonna break, 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 break. And the fakers, gonna fake, 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 fake. Baby, I'm just gonna shake, 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 shake. I shake it off, I shake it off. You laugh now, but just wait for that next moment when you know you need to move past something and can't. You're going to hear that song on the radio, and it's going to help, and you're going to want to dance. Church offers us not only some tools to help with shaking things off, but also multiple practice sessions within our faith community. I know we love each other and this place dearly, but yes, even here, we maybe need to let some things go rather than hold tightly to them. One last story from Anne Lamott. Anne tells the story of working extremely hard on an annual event at her church called the Faith Fair. It's an afternoon in early summer when her church rents a huge inflatable jump house, decorates their courtyard with balloons and streamers, and offers the families of the town lunch, snow cones, face painting, crafts. They have raffles and prizes and food. The choir sings. They played loud gospel CDs. Everything at the fair is free, even the raffle tickets. It's a ministry to the neighborhood, which is a troubled one. It takes a committee weeks of planning to pull off the Faith Fair. Anne has been running the fair for 6 years. Every year she charges 2 big-ticket items to her credit card, the jump house and the balloon bouquets. She also writes checks for other supplies, rubber balls, jump ropes, bottles of bubbles. After the fair, she gets reimbursed by the church. Every year, the organizers worry that no one will show up. Then dozens of kids begin arriving, and they worry that there won't be enough food or snow cone syrup. Something always goes wrong. Someone gets hurt on the jump house, or a bike gets stolen and the cops are called. Everything falls into wreckage, and then somehow things sort themselves out. Nothing went wrong this year at the Faith Fair, Anne writes. The PA system worked fine, the choir turnout was big, the teenagers were out in force painting the faces of the younger children. Late that night, Anne emailed her bill for expenses to the people on the fair committee. In early sobriety, she admits, I heard that if you have an idea after 10 p.m., it is probably not a good idea. Still, she writes, I am always under budget, so even though my mind was a birdhouse of exhaustion, stressed from overstimulation that day, I sent out my bill. At around 11, she heard from one woman on the committee that everything looked fine. Then at 11:15, she heard from a man on the committee who said he was sorry, but there was a new accounting system. This year they needed receipts, Visa bill, canceled checks. Anne freaked out. The email somehow brought up all of her frustration with systems, with men, with money, with self-esteem. It brought up all kinds of memories from childhood about the shame and fear surrounding money in her household. Before she could stop herself, Anne blasted off an angry email to the whole committee. She copied the pastor for good measure. The closing of her email was a huffy, I simply cannot spend one more second on this matter. She felt powerful and righteous for several minutes. Then she felt like hell. Why had she sent that email? Why was she even upset about being asked for receipts? It wasn't about her. It was just a new accounting system. Anne writes, sometimes I act just as juvenile as I ever did, but as I get older, I do it for shorter periods of time. I find my way back to the path sooner. Anne made herself a snack, oatmeal with applesauce. Then she wrote back to everyone on the committee, plus the pastor, and said, "I am sorry. Ignore my earlier email. Please forgive me." She wrote, "I know you already do." By the next morning, before she left for church, everyone had emailed her back. The man wrote, "We are here with only love for you, Annie." She read the email, went outside, and sat on the front step with her coffee and looked at the wild orange blossoms of the ginger plant in her garden until it was time to go. It doesn't always work out this way, but it's possible. It's possible for disappointment to open doors we had been afraid to enter. It's possible that the past won't let us live in the present. It's possible that everything makes its own sense, even when that sense is not immediately clear to us. When life's next catastrophe sends you reeling, sit down and take a few deep breaths and see what happens if you peel away the layers of meaning to see what is pulsing at the core. Or stand up, turn up the volume, and shake it off. Amen, and blessed be.